Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be recommending you 5 classic books from 5 different countries. As to what I classify as a classic, I think quite a few of these, I'm just looking out of the corner of my eye onto my screen, at least 3 of these are definitely classified as classics already. The other 2 I would classify as having the potential as becoming modern classics. So while they might not be a classic today necessarily, these books, including the other books, will have a timelessness and I think they will be talked about for decades and centuries to come. In terms of the countries that I picked, I did pick France, the US, Russia, Korea, and Japan. They all have one thing in common, at least one thing in common, and that is the fact that they all have incredible literature. I do have a bunch of other videos with other countries as well planned for the future, and I also have different videos with a spin on this 5 different books from 5 different something else, you know. So this is a little segment that I'm quite excited about. If you have any ideas that you would like me to particularly discuss, feel free to put them down in the comments below and I will try to include them in my schedule. Let's go on to the 5 books that I want to recommend to you. They are in no particular order. As usual, I will not be doing deep plot summaries. I don't like doing this because often they spoil the book before you've even read it. I will just give you an idea of the themes, the characters, and what to expect if you were to pick it up. So let's kick off with the first book, and that is coming from Korea. We have Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is a book that I read over a year ago, and it's a book that I still think about because it characterizes the immigrant struggle so well. And even though this is a book focusing on Koreans going into Japan at a time where Japan and Korea were very much at odds with each other and where Koreans were very much seen as second-class citizens in Japan, there is a timeless quality to the struggles the characters face. If you come from a family of immigrants, people who have left their home to go to another place in hopes of a better life, then this is a book that will deeply resonate with you. If you are somebody who has not personally had that experience or their family has not had that experience, then it will open up your eyes to what it is like to come from an immigrant family. It is a beautiful book. The characters are just some of the most tragic characters that you'll ever read, and it will open up your eyes to a part of the world that we typically, in the West at the very least, don't get our eyes opened up to. But as I said, the themes and the characters are very much not confined to Korea or Japan. These are struggles that many humans can relate to, and I think this is a book that is going to be talked about for decades to come. The next one that I have on my list is already considered a classic, and this is coming from Europe in France, and we have Père Goriot by Honoré de Balzac. This is a book that I didn't really know what to expect when I went into it because I had never heard anybody talk about it. It's definitely one of those underrated classics that you just kind of have to go in for the ride. We're following our main character Goriot as he's living his life in a shared accommodation with a bunch of other really interesting and fun characters. There is a lot of discussion around the corrupting power of money and social climbing. There's also discussion around parental sacrifice and the ingratitude of children, which is a theme that I love seeing explored in books. We don't get enough of it in my opinion, but I do really like it when it's done well, and it is done exceptionally well in this book. There is also this idea around the illusion of aristocracy and nobility, and also the brutality of living an urban life. It is one of those books that I literally knew nothing about it going into it, but I came out of it feeling like I really understood certain aspects of the human condition. French literature is some of my favorite literature out there, and I think they do a very good job of approaching topics that tend to be very cynical in nature with a level of positivity that I really appreciate. This book is quite humorous in certain regards, but at its heart, it is very much a tragic story, and it makes you feel a multitude of different emotions as you're reading it. It is fantastic. Then the next one that we have is coming out of Russia, and this is a book that I have mentioned before on my channel, but I haven't talked about it in depth for a while, so I wanted to bring it back to attention because I do think it's also really underrated, and that is The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. This is a short story. It'll probably take you about an hour and a half to read, depending on how fast you read, and we're essentially following a sick man as he's going about his life. And as I've said before on my channel, but I will say it again, this is a book for people who feel like they're not heard. This is a book for people who are going through their own struggles, whether it's an illness or you're not feeling 100%. It could be mental, physical, all of the above. I think it's just one of those books that if you read it at the right time, it could have a really profound effect on you. And even then, I think if you just read it even if you're perfectly fine with the way that you are, I think it will open up your eyes to how other people potentially feel when they're going through particularly difficult times as it relates to their health, their well-being. This is one of those books that the character work is just so phenomenal. The prose is absolutely beautiful. It is an absolute dream to read. I also do recommend the audiobook for this one. I have read this one physically, but also listened to the audiobook too, and I think both are excellent. And this is just one of those books that I think if you want to try and understand what it is like not really feeling like yourself and having to put on a face to placate other people because you don't want them to worry about you, then this is a book that you should definitely read. Naturally, with a book like this, it talks about things like the fear and denial of death. We also get discussion around what it means to lead a meaningful life, and in contrast, the falsehood of living a superficial life. There's also a lot of thematic exploration around the search for meaning, why we do the things that we do, why we live our lives in the way that we do. And there's also a lot of discussion around like suffering and redemption through suffering, amongst other themes. It is a beautiful book. It is amazing. It will change your life. Please do read this one. Then the next one that we have is a really, really fantastic book coming out of Japan. This is definitely going to be a modern classic if it isn't already. I feel like it already is a modern classic, to be honest. I wonder if anybody's guessed it, and that is Out by Natsuo Kirino. Now, interestingly enough, I wouldn't actually recommend this book to most people, but I think a lot of you who watch my channel tend to like books about the human condition, tend to like books that are quite dark in nature, and this book definitely hits both of those points. We are essentially following 4 female characters as they're going about living their life in the suburbs of Tokyo. We get a really unapologetic look at what it means to be a woman in Japanese society, and what it means to be a stay-at-home mum, and what it means to be somebody who is seen in a very specific way. We also get a really great insight into how each of these women feel about their lives, and also how that impacts their various different relationships, not only with other people, but also with themselves. This is a really, really dark book. And I think if you're somebody who doesn't like any sort of gratuity in their books, if you don't like any sort of violence, whether that's physical or psychological, then this is definitely a book that I would suggest that you stay away from. But if you are somebody who really likes to delve deeper into the darker sides of the human condition and morality, then I think this is a book that you would probably get quite a lot out of. With a book like this, we get a lot of exploration, as I've kind of already alluded to, around female oppression and gender roles, and how those roles kind of force people to commit and do certain things. We get a broader context around capitalism and economic struggles, and how capitalism essentially force people into situations that they don't want to be in. We also get a lot around like violence and survival, alienation and loneliness. Like, it's just so fantastic, folks. And what I love about this book is that it's really about the women in the book, but we also do get perspectives of men in this book too. So while this is very much a book about women and their struggles, we also see how this capitalistic, very misogynistic society also doesn't necessarily benefit the men in the world too. It is absolutely incredible. One of the best books I've ever read. And it is just one of those books that, even though I read this, I think coming up to like 18 months to even 2 years ago, it's a book that I still think about and I will be rereading at some point in the future. It's amazing. And then the final book that I have on this list is from the US, and this is an oldie but a goodie, but I feel like more and more people need to read it, especially when you look at it in the context of today, and that is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This book is one of my favorite books of all time, and for good reason, because it really captures the struggle of like the American dream, whatever that means in the 21st century. We're essentially following a family, and it's about all of their kind of individual struggles to reach the American dream. It also depicts the characters as being very much different shades of grey. There is no necessarily good versus evil, but everybody kind of falls somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of discussion around like morality, justice, and the pursuit of progress, and more importantly, what the cost of that progress is, what happens to the individuals who are trying to work in a world that doesn't necessarily appreciate or value the work that they're doing, but also more beyond that, how does that impact society as a whole? How does that impact the landscape? There is also a lot of interesting discussion around like family dynamics and family legacy as well in this book that I really like, about how families can often enter into these cycles that they find really difficult to get out of, and these generational cycles just basically build on trauma, which leads to incredibly unfulfilled lives because nobody's actually addressing that trauma. On the topic of good versus evil, I did say that there are very much like shades of grey. There is a really interesting topic around whether people are born evil or whether they become that way, whether their situation and external factors make them evil, which is a topic that I'm personally really interested in. And then lastly, there is a lot of exploration, as you would expect with a book like this, around identity and self-acceptance and forgiveness, and it's just amazing. It is amazing. It's one of those books that will stick with you for a very, very long time. All the characters are just deeply impactful in their own ways, and it is a story about morality and good and money and power and how all of these things can corrupt us as individuals. It is also simultaneously a story about family, but also individualism and trying to find your way in a world that doesn't necessarily want you to find it. Go and read it if you haven't read it, please. So that's it for now in this video. Those are 5 classics from 5 different countries. Let me know down below in the comments, specifically as it relates to these countries, what you would pick. Please do not mention any others because I will be doing future videos with other countries and we can have those discussions then. But as it relates to each of these countries in this list, let me know what you would recommend to other people, to myself, and I'm sure we will have a great discussion down below. If you like this video and you like this type of content, please give it a thumbs up and please do consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.